Basically, we'll have two big triangles, a matched pair. And so your boat would suspend right here from a cross member.
For years, fans of mountain men have been fascinated by the life of Eustace Conway, the rugged survivalist who turned Turtle Island Preserve into a living tribute to self-reliance and wilderness living. But even his most loyal followers couldn't have imagined what was recently uncovered deep beneath his land in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Hidden from view and untouched for decades, a secret tunnel system was finally discovered. And what it leads to has left even his closest friends in absolute shock. Locals have long whispered that Eustace's property held more than just cabins and hand-built barns. Rumors spoke of underground passages, escape routes, and forgotten chambers dating back to the early 1800s. Most brushed it off as mountain folklore until a recent structural survey and digging project unearthed something incredible. What began as a simple inspection for soil erosion soon turned into one of the most unexpected finds in modern homesteading history. Inside the tunnels, explorers reportedly found hand-carved wooden supports, preserved artifacts, and something that suggests Eustace may have been protecting a secret legacy all along. So what exactly was down there? Was it just an old pioneer hideout, or something that could completely reshape what we know about Conway's past? Let's take a closer look at what the discovery revealed. It all began on a quiet morning deep in the Blue Ridge Mountains, where mist rolled over the trees and the sound of hammering echoed faintly through the woods. Eustace Conway's Turtle Island Preserve had always been a place of mystery and peace, a sanctuary for those who sought a life away from modern noise. But on this particular day, what started as a simple repair job would lead to one of the most startling discoveries. In Conway's long and storied life, a few of Eustace's apprentices were reinforcing an old root cellar near one of the hand-built log cabins. Heavy rains had washed away some of the soil, and a small section of ground had collapsed overnight. When they began clearing the dirt, they noticed something odd, a hollow echo when they tapped the earth below. It wasn't the usual solid rock or packed soil of the mountain. Intrigued, they started digging a little deeper, and within minutes, they uncovered the entrance to what appeared to be a wood-lined tunnel, buried and sealed off for decades. Word spread quickly across the preserve. Eustace, ever the explorer, was both cautious and curious. He examined the entrance himself. The wood beams were hand-carved, aged, and sturdy despite the years. The design wasn't modern. It had the craftsmanship of an era long past. Someone built this with purpose, Eustace reportedly said quietly, running his hand over the rough timber. With flashlights and rope in hand, Eustace and two others descended into the narrow passage. The air was cool and still, filled with the smell of damp earth and cedar. The tunnel stretched forward, winding deep beneath the hillside. What they found along the way shocked them. Old tools, glass jars, preserved lanterns, and markings etched into the wall that seemed to tell a story. Some of the carvings appeared to be initials, perhaps of early settlers or workers who once lived on the land. Others were more mysterious, symbols that no one could easily identify, almost like coded messages. The deeper they went, the clearer it became that this wasn't just a random cave. It was a man-made network, carefully built and intentionally hidden. After nearly 20 minutes underground, the tunnel opened into a small chamber. Inside, there was a wooden chest covered in dirt and cobwebs. When Eustace pried it open, they found a collection of old papers, maps, and personal notes wrapped in oilcloth, astonishingly well preserved. The document seemed to detail early land routes through the Appalachian mountains and what looked like journal entries from someone who had lived there long before Eustace ever arrived. It was then that the group realized this tunnel system wasn't just part of Turtle Island. It might predate the entire property itself. It could have been part of an underground trading route, a Civil War-era hideout, or even a secret storage system used by early settlers escaping conflict. When they finally emerged into the daylight, covered in dust and awe, Eustace stood silent for a long time. The discovery wasn't just fascinating. It connected him in a deeply personal way to the generations who had lived on and loved this land before him. "This place has always had stories," he said later, "but now we're finally hearing one that was buried for over a century." Little did they know, this was only the beginning. What the team would uncover in the days to come would not only confirm the tunnel's mysterious origins, it would reveal something that could change how people viewed Turtle Island Preserve forever, after the dust settled, and the initial excitement wore off. Eustace Conway gathered a small team to carefully examine the papers and items discovered in the underground chamber. The chest had been sealed so tightly that many of the contents were still remarkably intact, despite decades, possibly even a century, of isolation. The air in the room that day felt thick with history. As Eustace gently laid each piece on the table inside his cabin, it was as if the past had come alive once again. Most of the documents appeared to be handwritten journals, maps, and a few folded letters wrapped in a faded leather pouch. The handwriting was beautiful but old-fashioned, the ink faint but still legible. The first few pages detailed what seemed to be the daily life of a mountain settler from the 1800s, references to harsh winters, hunting trips, and the construction of a secret passage beneath the ridge where the cedar stands. That line alone sent chills down Eustace's spine. The cedar ridge was exactly where they had found the tunnel entrance. The journal belonged to a man named Thomas Avery, a name unfamiliar to anyone in the region's modern records. Avery wrote vividly about carving the tunnel with his brothers during the early 1860s, at the height of the Civil War. He mentioned using it to store supplies, shelter travelers, and, more shockingly, to hide people fleeing conscription and conflict. It seemed Turtle Island's land had once been part of a hidden safe passage, a refuge for those who wanted to live free of war and government reach. Eustace was deeply moved. "That's exactly what I've been trying to do here my whole life," he murmured. Avery's writings reflected the same philosophy that guided Eustace: self-reliance, peace with nature, and a rejection of unnecessary conflict. It was almost eerie, as though the two men were connected across time by the same calling. As the team continued reading, they found something even more mysterious: a map drawn by hand, showing a network of tunnels and markers scattered across the surrounding mountains. Some tunnels extended far beyond Turtle Island's borders, possibly linking to other homesteads or even old trade routes. In the corner of the map, a cryptic note read, "Only the worthy shall find the second chamber." That phrase immediately caught Eustace's attention. Could there be another hidden section deeper underground? If so, what could it contain? A few pages later, another passage revealed more clues. Thomas Avery described placing the family's most precious belongings in a vault where only those who understand the land can tread. The words were poetic but deliberate. It was clear he'd left something behind, something he didn't want easily found. Eustace spent that night poring over the map, tracing the faded lines with his finger under a lantern's glow. He could tell the drawings were geographically accurate, based on the mountain's natural contours. One particular marking, a small X near a bend in the stream that still runs through Turtle Island today, stood out. "That's real," he said quietly. "That's right near the old black walnut tree." The next morning, he decided to return to the tunnels with a few trusted helpers. This time, they would follow the map's direction, determined to see whether the second chamber truly existed. Eustace's heart raced, not from fear but from anticipation. For a man who'd spent his entire life uncovering nature's lessons, this felt like a message sent across time just for him. Little did he realize that what they were about to uncover next would be far more than relics or history. It would point to a mystery that had been hidden beneath Turtle Island for over 150 years, one that might reveal why Eustace Conway has always felt such an unexplainable bond with this land. The following morning dawned with a pale mist rolling low through the trees, the kind of quiet mountain fog that seemed to hide secrets of its own. Eustace Conway, boots muddy and lantern in hand, led his small crew back toward the tunnel entrance beneath the ridge. He carried Thomas Avery's map rolled carefully in a leather case, every line now burned into his memory. The journal had spoken clearly. There was more hidden beneath Turtle Island. something Avery believed only a true steward of the land would ever find. They descended through the narrow wooden shaft, this time better prepared with ropes, shovels, and portable lighting. The earthy air hit them immediately, cool and damp, with the scent of cedar still strong after more than a century. They followed the original passage for about 50 yards until they reached a fork they hadn't noticed before. A faint crack in the wall that, upon closer inspection, looked like the beginning of a collapsed tunnel. "Here," Eustace said quietly, holding up the map. The X near the stream matched this exact spot. Without hesitation, the team began to dig. It was slow, grueling work. Every few feet brought new layers of rock and soil. Hours passed, the air growing heavy, until finally one of the shovels struck something hollow. A dull thud echoed through the tunnel. Everyone froze. They cleared away the remaining debris, revealing a small wooden door reinforced with iron hinges. It looked impossibly old, yet astonishingly well-preserved. Eustace ran his hand along the rough wood, feeling the marks of hand tools, the grooves of time. He pushed gently, and the door creaked open. What lay beyond took their breath away. The second chamber was larger, nearly the size of a small room carved carefully into the mountain's stone. Lanterns flickered against the walls, illuminating rows of sealed crates, old tools, and artifacts wrapped in canvas. In the center of the chamber stood a single object, a large wooden table covered in dust but still intact. On it sat a metal box, small but beautifully crafted, its lid engraved with the initials TA. Eustace approached it slowly, almost reverently. He lifted the lid, and inside he found something he never expected. A stack of handwritten letters and a small, leather-bound book with the words, "For the next keeper," carved into the cover. The letters were written by Thomas Avery himself, messages addressed not to anyone from his time, but seemingly to whoever would one day rediscover his work. One line stood out more than any other. "The land will always call to those who honor it. To the one who finds this, know that Turtle Island is not to be owned, but protected. Pass on the wisdom, not the wealth." Eustace's eyes welled with emotion. It was as if the spirit of the man who built this underground world was speaking directly to him, reaffirming everything Eustace had dedicated his life to. For years, he had fought to preserve Turtle Island against modern encroachment, government regulations, and the loss of traditional living. Now, this message from the past felt like validation, proof that his path wasn't just chosen, but destined. As the team continued exploring the chamber, they found several items of historical significance: a rusted revolver, an old compass, a Bible with handwritten notes, and even a carved wooden amulet shaped like a turtle. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. For Eustace, it felt like a sign. The turtle had always represented patience, wisdom, and longevity. Before leaving, Eustace took one last look around the chamber, his lantern casting soft light over the ancient walls. "He built this so someone like us could find it," he said softly. "This isn't just history. It's a message about living in harmony with the land." As they climbed back to the surface, the sun was beginning to set over Turtle Island. The golden light stretched through the trees, and Eustace stood silently for a moment, staring at the hills that had now revealed their deepest secret. What he had uncovered was far more than a hidden tunnel. It was the legacy of a kindred spirit, preserved underground for generations. But even as he walked away, one question lingered in his mind. If this was the second chamber, what else might still be waiting to be found beneath the mountains? The days following the discovery of the second chamber were filled with quiet reflection across Turtle Island Preserve. Eustace Conway had seen many things in his life: storms that tore through the Blue Ridge Mountains, battles with bureaucracy, the endless struggle to preserve a way of life few understood. But nothing had shaken him quite like what he found beneath his own land. The words of Thomas Avery echoed in his mind: "Pass on the wisdom, not the wealth." For Eustace, those words carried a weight far heavier than any treasure could. He knew immediately that this was never meant to be exploited or turned into a spectacle. The tunnels were sacred, not in the religious sense, but as a reminder of endurance, courage, and purpose. They told the story of men who, in their time, had resisted chaos and chosen harmony with the natural world. Still, word of the discovery began to spread among those who worked at Turtle Island. Visitors, curious neighbors, and even local historians wanted to know more. Eustace, ever cautious, limited access to the site. "This isn't for show," he told them. "This is for learning." He saw the tunnels as a bridge between two eras, proof that self-reliance and respect for the land had always been a part of the Appalachian spirit. Over the next several weeks, he and a small team cataloged the items from the chambers. Every crate, letter, and artifact was handled with care and recorded. They found more writings from Thomas Avery describing the hardships of mountain living, the loss of family, the hope of a future generation who might continue his work, and a haunting line in one of the final pages. "When the world forgets the old ways, may the earth remind them." That line hit Eustace hard. For years, he had been trying to remind people of those very old ways, teaching apprentices to build cabins by hand, to live without modern comforts, to listen to nature rather than fight against it. Now, this discovery proved that he wasn't just preserving history, he was continuing it. When reporters eventually caught wind of the tunnels, Eustace chose not to capitalize on the attention. He released a short statement saying only that a historical site of personal significance had been found on the property, and that it would be used as part of Turtle Island's educational programs. He refused interviews, telling one journalist simply, "Some things are meant to be lived, not televised." Instead, Eustace focused on restoring the chambers and stabilizing the tunnels to prevent collapse. Using traditional methods, he reinforced the old beams, installed simple drainage systems, and even built a small wooden gate to mark the entrance. He called it Avery's Passage. Visitors who came to Turtle Island months later noticed a new calm in Eustace, as if the discovery had given him peace. "It's like he finally found what he'd been looking for," one of his apprentices remarked. Not treasure, not fame, but proof that his life's work mattered. In time, Eustace began to include the story of Thomas Avery in his teachings. Around the campfire at night, he would tell young visitors about the man who lived by the same principles a century before him. He'd point toward the ridge and say, "That mountain remembers. It holds stories for those willing to listen." As winter crept over the Blue Ridge, Eustace often visited the tunnel alone. He would light a lantern and stand in silence inside the cool stone chamber, surrounded by the echoes of history. He said it made him feel closer to something eternal, the unbroken chain of people who had lived humbly, honestly, and bravely on this land. Before leaving one evening, he placed a small carving of his own, a turtle made from walnut wood, beside Thomas Avery's box. He didn't write a note or leave an explanation. He just smiled, knowing that one day, perhaps another keeper of Turtle Island would find it and understand. The mountain keeps its secrets well. But now one of them had finally been shared, not through fame or discovery, but through legacy. And for Eustace Conway, that was the truest treasure of all.